On there too?
These are the people that have gathered for the little speechy, which I am going to present. Joe says hi. He's my timer. Frederick, say hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
Go. Started
It's not. It's too.
Oh.
Up from missing your head.
I hope you can edit this.
That good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chill.
All right. Do you have things you would like to learn about? Do you think that God wants you to learn about His world and the things He created in it? Galileo was a good example of a person who wanted to know about the world he lived in. We would like to look a bit over Galileo's life and find some inspiration to back our own pursuits of knowledge and wisdom and understanding. Galileo was a very curious child. One of the things we remember about him, most of y'all have probably heard the thing of him watching a chandelier as he sat in church because he was bored with the sermon, I guess. And he thought of, or he was trying to figure out what caused that. Later in life, he made a pendulum that used the same principle as that swinging chandelier, and he observed that there was, I guess he created a clock out of it, more or less, because it swung in a slightly out of round pattern. First, his schooling, he went to a monastery. I don't really know why. His parents weren't particularly rich, but they were of noble blood. And he studied there. I think he was trying to become a monk. But then his dad decided that he wanted him to be more noble. He decided he wanted him to be a medical doctor. And so Galileo went to the University of Pisa to study medicine. He really didn't enjoy that as much, so he took classes on math and philosophy. And he studied those things. He never got his degree in medicine. He instead went on to, he just quit there at Pisa and went on to study math and philosophy and those things he was interested in. He began teaching math after he was done with his time there at Pisa first of all for private students, and then he went to universities and kept teaching math. He began teaching when he was 22. When he was 23, he wrote his first book. That was about a balance, I believe. He lived with Maria Gamba for a few years, and they had 2 daughters, both of who went on to become nuns. I guess maybe following the tradition of their dad, who didn't quite get there. Well, not to a nun, I guess, but to be a monk. Galileo, as an older man, at about 45, he made his telescope and began searching the heavens. When he had observed for a while, he saw, for example, that Jupiter had moons. He began to think that the idea of geocentrism, or the Earth being the center of the universe, wasn't quite right. He thought that perhaps the solar system as we know it revolved around the sun. Another thing he saw, and this was something that they had said about, the previous philosophers said, well, that Venus, for example, the sun shines straight through it at the Earth, and that's why we can see, the light off of it at the sun if the Earth is the center. But he saw that the seasons changed on Venus, which indicated that probably the sun was the center. The church didn't really like these things that Galileo was saying. They called him into question for this, and they weren't all opposed to it, but they did say that they didn't appreciate it. Cardinal Bellarmine said, if real proof be found that the sun is fixed and does not revolve around the earth, but the earth around the sun, then it would be necessary very carefully to proceed to the explanation of scriptures which appear to be contrary, and we should say rather that we have misunderstood these than to pronounce that to be false, which is demonstrated. He's saying that the earth didn't, well, by the Bible they thought the earth was the center. One of the instances of that was when the sun stayed its course as Joshua was fighting there with the Israelites. But they didn't trust Galileo's descriptions, and he was kept under house arrest on order of the Inquisition until his death. He became blind 5 years before he died. I guess that kind of silenced some of his learning and teaching. He was first buried obscurely after his death, but then the Pope deemed it necessary that he would be buried with honor. He was buried at Santa Croce in Florence, in the church itself. In closing, I'd like to share with you a statement that Galileo made. He says, "I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with sense, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego its use."